USS Indianapolis was a Portland-class heavy cruiser of the United States Navy. In July 1945, Indianapolis completed a top-secret, high-speed trip to deliver parts of Little Boy, the first nuclear weapon ever used in combat, to the United States Army Air Force Base on the island of Tinian, and subsequently departed for the Philippines on a training duty. At 0015 on the 30th of July, the ship was torpedoed by the Imperial Japanese Navy submarine and sank in 12 minutes. But the ship's sinking was just the beginning of the sailor's nightmare. Of the 1,196 men aboard, 900 made it into the water alive. Their ordeal, what is considered the worst shark attack in history, was just beginning. As the sun rose, the survivors bobbed in the water. Life rafts were scarce. The living searched for the dead floating in the water and appropriated their life jackets for survivors who had none. Hoping to keep some semblance of the order, survivors began forming groups, some small, some over 300 in the open water. Soon enough, they would be staving off exposure, thirst, and sharks. The animals were drawn by the sound of the explosions, the sinking of the ship, and the thrashing and blood in the water. The first night the sharks focused on the floating dead, but the survivor struggles in the water only attracted more and more sharks, which could feel their motions. As the sharks turned their attention towards the living, especially the injured and the bleeding, sailors tried to quarantine themselves away from anyone with an open wound, and when someone died, they would push the body away, hoping to sacrifice the corpse in return for a reprieve from a shark's jaw. Many survivors were paralyzed with the fear, unable even to eat or drink from the meager rations they had salvaged from their ship. The sharks fed for days, with no signs for rescue for the men. Navy intelligence had intercepted a message from the Japanese submarine that had torpedoed the Indianapolis, describing how it had sunk an American battleship along the Indianapolis route, but the message was disregarded as a trick to lure American rescue boats into an ambush. In the meantime, the Indianapolis survivors learned that they had the best odds in a group, and ideally in the center of the group. The men on the margins, or worse, alone, were the most susceptible to the sharks. As the days passed, many survivors suffered hallucinations that compelled them to drink the seawater around them, a sentence of death by salt poisoning. Those who so slaked their thirst would slip into madness, foaming at the mouth as their tongues and lips swelled. They often become as great a threat to the survivors as the shark circling below. Many dragged their comrades underwater with them as they died. After 11 a.m. on their fourth day in the water, a Navy plane flying overhead spotted the Indianapolis survivors and radioed for help. Within hours, another seaplane, manned by Lieutenant Edwin Marks, returned to the scene and dropped rafts and survivor supplies. When Marks saw men being attacked by sharks, he disobeyed orders and landed in the infested waters, and then began taxiing his plane to help the wounded, who were the greatest risk. A little after midnight, the USS Doyle arrived on the scene and helped to pull the last survivors from the water. Of the Indianapolis' original 1,196-man crew, only 317 remained. Estimates of the number who died from shark attack range from a few dozen to almost 150. It is impossible to be sure. But either way, the ordeal of the Indianapolis survivors remains the worst maritime disaster in the history of the US Navy. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe and support my channel on PayPal. Details in the description box.